The Charlotte market is sending mixed signals. Sales are down nearly 14%, but contracts are up. Inventory is rising and homes are sitting longer, but pricing is still up as well. So what exactly is happening? Is the market cooling? Is it stabilizing? Or are we quietly setting up for another strong year? We're going to be breaking down what is going on in the housing market, and towards the end, we're going to be making predictions as to what to expect for the rest of the year, since everyone loves to make predictions. If you're new here, I'm Cameron. I work with people every day who are looking to move within the Charlotte area or invest, and my job is to share what's really happening and what the trends are, not just repeat headlines that you may see in other articles. Let's start with the number that grabs everyone's attention and can create misleading headlines. Closed sales were down 13.7% from January this year from January last year. And if you stopped right there, you'd say, oh, there's a market slowdown. And what if I told you you'd be wrong? This is why context matters, and headlines can be very misleading, because just although transactions were down 13.7% compared to last year in January, doesn't mean that we really had any type of slowdown. That just means that last November and December, people weren't buying homes. And when you compare the full year of 2025 versus 2024, transactions were actually up 1.9%. Yes, this isn't a ton, but it's definitely not as bad as reading down almost 14%. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Pending sales, homes that just went under contract, are up 7.3% this January versus last January, which is actually a forward-looking demand, but can actually be chalked up as just making up for last November and December. So does this mean that demand has been vanished? Not really. It actually just means that we might be gaining momentum. What plays a huge role to buyers and sellers is inventory. Inventory increased 14.4% year over year to just shy of 10,000 homes in the Charlotte region, and throughout the year, we actually saw on average a 35.1% increase. Now, let's create some context. In 2021, buyers were competing with 1.5 months of inventory, meaning that if another home didn't come on the market, it would take just a month and a half until there's no more options left. Today, we're sitting at 2.7 months supply. Is that high? No. A balanced market is actually anywhere from 4 to 6 months supply. So this also isn't an oversupply for people freaking out about what's going on. It's actually just a normalization, but homes are lasting much longer on the market than you may think. Homes now take 67 days to sell around Charlotte, and 5 years ago, homes felt like it was taking 67 minutes to sell. But this changes behavior. Buyers think much longer and are much more picky nowadays. And if you're thinking about selling your home for your own sake, please present it well as possible. If you don't, it's really gonna be rough out there for you, and buyers are negotiating much more now than they did in the past. So you're gonna be actually selling your home for less than you would expect, but homes that are presented well are still moving quickly. This is what it feels like on the ground. We have fewer bidding wars. Unless you're in South Charlotte, then you're still seeing plenty of neighborhoods with homes selling in just a week. But outside of that, that's not the case. We have way more price reductions, as around half the homes on the market end up reducing their price at least once while it's listed. You see more negotiation from buyers, and me personally, I'm typically writing up offers that are 5 to 10% lower than the list price unless it just hit the market. But generally, there's less emotional chaos since buyers usually have time now to make a decision and not feel pressured into writing up an offer the second they finish seeing a home. Ultimately, things have slowed down. We're not in a buyer's market, but we're really not in frenzy mode either. And it feels like a much needed change, as the real estate should move at this speed rather than feeling rushed into a home, because obviously that's a big decision. So the other big headline people are thinking about is price. I typically like to look at the median sales price over average, as there are periods throughout the year where a lot of luxury real estate will move, and this heavily skews the average sale price numbers higher than what it should be. Now, in the Charlotte market, the median sales price is now at $390, which is totally normal because we've been hovering from $395 to $420 for a couple years now. In 2021, we saw double-digit appreciation throughout the entire region, with some areas like Fort Mill appreciating over 30%. And so now when we see that single-digit appreciation now at 2% year over year, it kind of gets people feeling bored, and they're kind of looking at your home like, what's going on? But that's really how real estate should behave. Consistent 4-ish% yearly gains. And I view this as a very good thing and signs that it's becoming healthier. People can now make decisions based on information rather than fear of missing the boat because pricing will get away from them, or even worse, the people who are saying, oh, we're gonna see this 50% decrease, just you wait. Let's talk about that though, and I'd love to hear your comments below. Why do you think the prices are gonna crash for those who keep calling for this terrible real estate market crash? I mean, I think people are calling for a crash is pretty silly personally, as there are way too many data points to turn that's actually support growth. And real estate is a local market, so I won't get into nationally, but here in Charlotte, we're still seen as an affordable city up and down the East Coast. Again, 5th cheapest city just behind Atlanta, Baltimore, Philly, and Jacksonville. And I would argue we are much more desirable than those places. North Carolina ranked #1 for business according to the CNBC article, and it's actually just second in job openings as well. We have unemployment that's below the national average at 3.6%. Plus, we have 157 people moving into the Charlotte area every day net, with a ton of people from out of state moving here from places like New York, Florida, and California, which will continue to prop up our pricing. This is all happening while interest rates remain high, and that has been there for a while now, and we have a ton of economic uncertainty. So imagine if sentiment changes, what that's gonna do to prices. Now, I would love to get into the stock market, politics, and bonds and all of that, but I'm gonna save that for a different video because this would be an hour-long conversation. And but at the end of the day, real estate is not this crazy volatile asset, and it's not supposed to be behaving like that. So this 2-ish% appreciation that we saw last year is actually a good thing. Now, we saw one big crash back in the global financial crisis in 07 and 08, and I believe a lot of people still have this PTSD from that situation, which I get it. But when you look at the past 6 recessions, real estate has only gone down once. So it all in all those recessions. So all because the stock market goes down doesn't mean home prices will go down as well. Housing is typically a very safe asset, and of course you have to buy smart, but waiting usually ends up hurting people at the end because by the time they wait for that 10% discount, prices have already gone up 15%. So sorry, I just had a little rant there, but ultimately I think we're in for another steady year, which we'll see about a 3 to 4% appreciation, which is nothing crazy, but I think that should be expected unless we see some major companies around here going under or another black swan event, which is impossible to predict anyway, so why try it? But I always boil it down to 3 things when you're thinking about making a move. Do you want to make a move? Because it is a lot of work and commitment. Are you able to make a move? Meaning, can you afford it? And lastly, does it align with your long-term goals? Because if you don't intend on being here for the next few years, you probably shouldn't be making that move because real estate takes time to actually build up, and selling costs are just too high to make the math make sense. But it's really that simple. If it doesn't fit all 3, can't just be 2 of them, then don't move. To wrap up the update, buyers have more leverage than they have in a while, but don't expect discounts everywhere, and be reasonable. Sellers, presentation and pricing matters now more than ever. If you want help navigating this Charlotte market strategically and not emotionally, reach out. And if you want data-driven Charlotte updates every week, subscribe below because the market is evolving and context is everything. See you next time.